Hello everyone. I have been meaning to make a video sharing a little bit more about this book that I have been using and working with for the last 2 years, I want to say. It is the Book of Houses by Robert Cole and Paul Williams. It says an astrological guide to the harvest cycle in human life. I first learned about this book as through the Moon Mandala Collective that is run by The Moon is My Calendar. I happen to have a postcard by April here. And so she introduced me to the book first and provided some instructions on how to use it. I'm really grateful for that because I really took a liking to the book. So before I share the book, I always like to introduce my crystals to you. So here I have some clear quartz that I bought a few years ago from a friend of mine who was selling crystals at the time. And this one's very special in my opinion because it has this shape here that's called the window. And for people who work with crystals, sometimes shapes like this, which are called windows, can mean that the crystal has like some unique ability to help you with some astral travel, like seeing into other realities. So that's one thing I have learned about the crystal windows. I also have here a rough moonstone that I think I also purchased from my friend. Moonstone usually has some flash. I don't know if I'll be able to get the flash to show, but moonstone is one of my favorite crystals and stones, and I really like rough stones, especially when they have some of these like matrix material where the crystal grows in. And then the last one is this one, which I believe is rainforest rhyolite, because of these different like growths. I think it's a type of jasper. And this one I also got from my friend. She tumbled it herself, so she had the rough piece and then tumbled it, and I just really like the feeling of it. So these are my crystal companions for today. So back to the book. So basically, the Book of Houses uses your astrological birth chart and applies to it a harvest cycle. So I can read a little bit of the introduction here. Maybe I should move the candle out of the way before I burn my book. So it gives a little bit of an introduction about the difference between houses in the chart versus the sun signs, which is sometimes what most people know about their astrology. So I'll read a little bit of this page here where it explains the harvest cycle. The houses in this book are periods of time ranging from 15 to 45 days. Each of us passes through the same 12 houses or 12 stages of growth every year. The purpose of this book is to provide a basic description of what each of these stages is like, and to let you know when each stage begins and ends for you. The houses are arranged in a sequence that begins with the house of choosing seeds and ends with the house of harvest. Each house is a stage in the personal growth cycle that climaxes each year on your harvest day. Awareness of the harvest cycle has been a primary survival tool of human beings since we first began to grow our own food. By looking at the stars, ancient farmers determined the best time for plowing, planting, irrigation, harvesting. The position of the stars was recognized as a reference tool, telling us what time it is here on Earth. So if you are familiar with astrology, then this next image won't look too strange. Basically, And if you're not familiar, I'll try to explain. I'm not an astrologer, just interested in astrology and have benefited from using astrology in my life. So everyone has something called the birth chart, which is a map of the sky the moment you were born. So to get your birth chart, there's many places online where you can go. I like astro-seek.com. Astrologycafe.com is also pretty good, and so is astrochart.com. You go to those websites, you put in your birth date, birth location, and birth time, and you will get back a circle like this with 12 different sections, different signs and numbers. So the houses are each of the 12 sections, and for each person it's different. Each house represents a different area of your life, and that is how the Book of Houses is using the houses and then adding part of the harvest cycle that matches to that house. So one of the first things that you do if you get this book is you need to have your birth chart available. You do need it with the birth time, because otherwise you won't know where to start or your houses start. So the book walks you through instructions about how to find the different harvest elements, the harvest cycle elements that they mentioned. So this is what your chart looks like, and then the harvest cycle is like adding another layer onto your birth chart. So once you have your birth chart, Resurrection Day is when your first house begins. Heritage Day is here, Sharing Day, and Harvest Day. So these are the main holidays of the harvest cycle. Each house from the birth chart represents a part of the harvest cycle. So very interestingly, the book starts with the 11th house, because this is a house where you are choosing your seeds. So you would imagine that maybe they would start in the first house, but since that is the house of seeing the sun, when your seeds are already ready to come out into the world, but how can something grow if something you haven't planted, how can it grow? So that's why we start with the 11th house. In the back of the book, once you have your birth chart, there is a table that uses the degrees of your houses to tell you what date your house starts. So there's a chapter with instructions, and I'm not gonna give instructions about how to do that. If you read the book, I'm sure you can figure it out, but also in the future I will be sharing more about this and maybe having a workshop for people who are interested. So this is my chart. I use the degree table in the back to figure out when my houses start, and then I filled everything in here. So then, as I mentioned, each house has a reference to the harvest cycle. So let's go back to the 11th house, the house of choosing seeds. There's information about what this house means, what could be happening in your life in this house. You can write your dates here, when it starts and when it ends. There's a little message here: pay attention to your dreams now. You are choosing the seeds that will grow to next year's harvest. So there's information about the house and things that you should be doing in order to prepare yourself and have the most successful, like get the most out of this stage in your life. And after I started using it, it was really interesting, because I realized that my life usually has a lot of transitions around the time of my 11th house, or that's when I start like dreaming and thinking of what I want to do next. And this was before I even started using the book. So if you do start using the book, you might find that the things that happen to you, they're following this pattern that you didn't even know about, which I was pretty impressed with. So then the 12th house is a house of germination. It tells you different things you can do. And I really enjoy this list of questions that it gives you at the end of each house, because it's very like instructions, so it's really helpful. Then it describes the holiday a little bit. So basically that's the setup of the book. It gives you information about each of the houses, what you can do, what are some of the things that you might be dealing with. It's a pretty hefty book. Well, it's not a large book, but it's like a deep book. Like I said, I've been working with it for 2 years, and I still continue to learn new things by reading where I'm at. Sometimes there's things that jump out at me that maybe I didn't realize before. So I am right now in my first house. Let's see, where's the first house? So the first house is the house of the self, and I'm going to be here until October 23rd, when I will go into my second house. So the things that I need to be doing right now are to go on a retreat for a weekend or longer. There's a need to be absolutely alone by myself. Also, it's a good time to remember the wishes that I've made back in my 11th house, and to remind myself that I am the person who will make these dreams come true. So that's a list of different things you can do. So I don't want this video to be super long, but I wanted to share how I work with the book and the book of houses. So since I have my birth chart information in here, I reference and come back to the book often. I will put my dates in my new moon journal so that I also remember in case I don't come back to the book. I have a prompt in my journal to send me back to the book to see what's going on. I like making cards, like study cards. So I made myself this set of 12 harvest cycle cards that have the different stages of the harvest cycle. Right now they're not in order, but I usually will find the one that I'm in, and I will prop it up in my nightstand so I can see it often and remember what stage of my birth chart and my harvest cycle I'm currently going through. And so why do this? Maybe I should explain that. I have found that using this process of using the harvest cycle to create my intentions and my goals has been really helpful. And so I started using it last year for the first time, and I wrote my seeds here. I'm not going to open them up, but it invites you to write them in a special paper and to read them often. And that level of clarity, I think sometimes we don't know where to start with the dreams and the goals that we have. So I found this process really helpful. The act of paying attention to my dreams and my desires during a certain time of the year, and then following the steps to make sure that I am not forgetting those dreams and actually taking action each month during each house, and honoring the different stages that those seeds are going through. So back to the cards. So I made them because I like to draw, and I also like to have something tangible that I can use. So these are hand drawn by me, and they're just for my personal use. They have all the different parts of the harvest cycle. So this is choosing your seeds, which is at the 11th house. They're not in order right now, but this is the house of budding and flowering, pollination, germination, planting your seeds, and seeing the sun. So let's see, germination would be the 12th house, and seeing the sun is the first house. And I believe the very first card I had, exploratory growth, might be the second house. So that's something you can do to help you study the harvest cycle and just keep it in your mind as you're going about your day. When you wake up, I see my card. I remember my seeds. I think about where I'm at in my birth chart and in the harvest cycle, and see if there's anything I can do. So that's one set of cards that I made the first year I started using the book. I'm making a second set of cards because in addition to the harvest cycle, so the house of pruning and weeding, the book also has this under another label or theme for each of the houses, and this is the theme of the astrology houses. So the fourth house is about family, the first house is about the self, the second house is about the psychic. No, I think the 12th house is about the psychic, the 11th house is the visionary, and I haven't made my card for the self. And this time I'm using color, and this is just going to be another set of cards that I will use in conjunction with my harvest cycle cards. And you don't have to do this, but this is just one way that I have found works for me to learn the process, and it's also a way to do some creative expression. So something that I have also started doing a little differently this year is that instead of writing my seeds in a loose paper, so at the end of maybe like 10 years of doing this, I would have 10 pieces of paper. I decided to just dedicate one notebook where I'm going to write my seeds each year. And I do foresee that I will be doing this for the rest of my life because it has just been so powerful to have this map of how my life is unfolding. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to flip through my seeds because those are very personal, but that's another thing you can do. Have a dedicated notebook where you are either tracking all of your book of houses progress, or like me, just have a dedicated notebook where you're going to write your seeds. And I might actually come back at the end of the harvest cycle when I'm starting to pick my seeds for next year and add a little bit more like journaling and some additional things here. So I hope I explained clearly what the Book of Houses is and how you can use it. This book is not out of print. You can buy it online still. I will be creating some journaling prompts and journaling cards and workbooks to go with the Book of Houses in case you need a little bit of assistance with how to use it. And keep an eye out for those. As soon as I create them and have a sample to share with you, I will create a video. But for now, let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have ever used this harvest cycle approach to your goals and to creating your life. And thank you so much for coming back to my channel. If you are new here, I appreciate it if you subscribe, if you found my content interesting. And if you have questions or suggestions for other things you would like to see from me, please tell me in the comments. Thank you.